Robert Noon joined Location Sound Corporation in 1989. He became their rental manager in 1996. His role is the logistics and inventory of all of their rental gear, with the goal of keeping their equipment fresh and current. Hello, Robert. Welcome back.
Hi. How's it going?
I always enjoy talking with you, and I'm glad that you came back, because this week we're talking about audio. Before we start, though, how would you describe Location Sound?
Well, we've been in business for over 40 years. We service the production sound needs of our industry, and we carry sales, rental, and service here. So we're a one-stop shop for sound people, and we deal with production mixers and people who gather sounds for news, broadcast, that sort of part of the industry.
Well, there's lots of rental houses out there. Why should someone consider working with Location Sound?
Just our experience, friendly nature, and the ease of renting from us.
We just heard a conversation with Paul Isaacs from Sound Devices about trends that he sees in audio technology that'll affect the new gear coming out at NAB. From your perspective, having to keep your gear current, what audio technologies are you seeing that's starting to drive rentals?
This year there's going to be more changes in the RF market than pretty much anything else. The recorders have been pretty standardized for a while. They're linear and stuff like that. They record on flash cards and that type of medium. But what we're starting to see now is the FCC has made some rules that's going to impact wireless market. First of all, they sold off a whole lot of RF spectrum to T-Mobile and them. So anything above, I think it was 618, is going to be moved to T-Mobile, and they bought them in the auctions and stuff like that. So now we're going to be in a smaller diameter from 470 to around 618, I think is where the cutoff is. And they're going to be compressed into that smaller spectrum, and the RF demands are not going down, they're going up. So these rule changes are going to affect the technology and how we do wireless mics and antenna placement and lowering the power. Before, everybody used to put more power to put more signal strength out. Now it might behoove people to actually compress the audio, put less power out. Like instead of putting 100 milliwatt transmitters out, you want to put them on 25 or 50 milliwatts and use antenna placement so you're not running into all the RF interference that's out there now, and competing against people that are working on a stage next to you and stuff. So putting less RF power out might help all those situations. That's what people have to change. Before it was more power, cover more area, saturate the grounds better. But with the compression and stuff like that, it might be less power, more antennas, and to help it out. The other thing that they did is the FCC changed the deviation rule for companies like Electrosonics, which was using a deviation value of 75. It's now gone to 50. So, you have to make sure your transmitters match up to your receivers. And if you buy newer transmitters, they might not work into your older receivers unless you have the firmware updates and stuff like that. So those things are going to cause a lot of problems because you have people that usually just keep adding on to their fleet in wireless. And now, if they add a new transmitter, it might not work with their backwards compatible as good unless you have all the software updates. And in the rental houses, how that's going to affect us is we rent a lot of pieces into somebody just needs a transmitter to cover a boom pole or something like that. It's a special thing that they're doing, or a smaller transmitter. Now we have to be aware that either we got to rent them the older stuff and hold on to that longer than we usually do, not go into the new stuff as much, or when we rent the new stuff, rent it with a matching receiver from our side so you're not going to have incompatibility. That's going to make it very confusing, and it's going to make it tough for a while and for people to understand what those changes are going to be.
For people that already own analog wireless gear, can Location Sound help us figure out if our gear is compatible?
Yes, it's more software updates and stuff like that. You just got to make sure you're in the right software update. And it's mostly going to affect the Electrosonics band, which is pretty much an industry standard for us. But they're the ones that had the 70 deviation, and now the FCC's rule change has made 50, which is a European standard. So most of the stuff like Sennheiser and stuff were already on the 50 deviation. So the biggest people it's going to impact is mostly the electrosonics community, which is probably 80% of the wireless that are in production sound.
One of the things you mentioned at the beginning is that location sound has both sales and rental. How do we decide, or what criteria should we use in deciding whether to rent or buy our audio gear?
If you think you're only going to use it a couple times a year, less than, let's say, 6, then you probably should rent. If you believe you're going to use it 6 or more times a year, then you probably should add it into your fleet. Also, if you're looking to expand your package and you're not sure which way you go, I would recommend renting the first couple times just to get a feel of what you want to do before you put out that outlay of capital. And a lot of times what we do is if you rent from us and then you buy from us, we give you a discount on the rental, the previous rental. The biggest thing you have to decide is how often you're going to use it. If you're not using it too often, I don't think that capital outlay is best. The more you use it, the more you want to buy it. The less you use it, the less you want to buy it.
I really want to reinforce that because a few years ago, I needed to buy a collection of lavalier mics for my studio. And one of the smartest things I did was rent about 10 different mics from Location Sound, then test them to see which ones sounded the best in my studio. Mm-hmm. And what I learned in talking with your team at the time that I was renting all that gear is that audio is foreign territory for a lot of video producers. So what help does Location Sound provide in making sure that we're getting the right gear for our project?
You know, when you come in and you explain what you're doing and stuff like that, we're going to design packages that fit your needs and cover what you've told us. The audio quality and stuff like that is also based on budget, so we need to know what budget range you're looking in so we can decide if it's better for you to buy or rent mostly and what you can afford with the budget you have. If you have only a couple $100, sometimes it's better to just put wireless going in the cameras. Preferably, we would say it's always better to have it going into a recorder. You record it on the recorder and maybe send the signal to the camera to have a backup track. But everything is dependent on the budget. So deciding the budget and what ways they're going, if you're buying or if you're going to rent, the decision that we help you sort of decide, you know, if it's over the weekend and stuff, of course you're going to rent, but then how much is in the budget to accomplish what you want to do, and we try to give you the best products that's going to solve your problem and get what you want done accomplished based on the budget. Mics and stuff like that, a lot of that is preference per a person's ears. That is something, you know, we can give you the different mics and you can listen to them and you can decide which way you want to go on that. That is more preference. Sometimes talents require certain mics based on their voice and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that is more opinionated, and the best thing we can do is give you a wide selection, let you know what's more the industry standard, show you what the industry standard is, and show you the comparable mics in that field and decide what your preference is. Some people like an open mic, some people like a bright mic, some people like a full sounding mic, you know, so there's different needs and requirements for the person, and that is on an individual basis.
One last question before I let you go. For producers who haven't worked with an audio rental house before, what questions should they ask the people they are renting from before they make a decision to rent?
That's more pertains to how the procedures, some companies have very strict procedures. They need insurance. They do credit card holds on the equipment. And one thing good about us is we just make you fill out the credit card authorization form, and we only charge you for the rental. We assume that the card you gave us is what the card we're going to run, and if it goes through, that you have a good credit card. So we don't do like $1,000 hold or $500, which ties up your credit line. So I would say that's a big thing that I know a lot of people are happy that we don't do that, and it makes it easier to process the order and stuff like that.